Hey everybody, good evening. Welcome to session 2 of our series on Teshuvah. If you missed the first session, or if you want to review, it was recorded on YouTube as well as a podcast. And I will put the links for the links for that are on the Facebook event in the discussion. So you're welcome to check those out to catch up or what have you. This class will also be recorded, so cool. And also, better lighting this time. I was so dark last time we were doing it. Nice, intimate environment. One day when I become a real hashtag influencer, I'll get one of those ring lights. And then you don't even know what kind of influence I can wreak. So this is session 2. And each session works on its own. It's modular that way, but it's also building a certain kind of narrative. Last week, we talked about an understanding of Teshuvah as being a spiritual wake-up call, with the Rambam literally imagining a scene in which the shofar stirs us up from our slumber, like an alarm clock wakes us from our sleep, to try to bring intention and attention into our often sleepwalky type lives, to bring a sense of perspective and distance from ourselves, to interrupt the kind of mindless processing that life can so often be, such that we can then have an opportunity to then analyze ourselves. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. Once we have been stirred up from that immediate sense of slumber and of sleep, then we can now apply ourselves to, once you get distance from something, then we can start to analyze it, to inspect it, to take an account of ourselves. And that's what we'll be focusing on this session. Namely, it's a practice that is called, in Musar literature, in Jewish ethical self-help literature, it's called Cheshbon haNefesh, which literally means an account of oneself. Cheshbon is from the word lachshov, right, to think, but it also means to take an account of something. And literally, it's the word that's used by like accountants when they do, their actuarial work or what have you. So you're taking an inventory of yourself to try to take stock of where you are, but also where you've been and where you want to go. And the phrase Cheshbon haNefesh garnered a certain kind of renown, especially after a book was published named Sefer Cheshbon haNefesh. There's a book published by Reb Mendel Lifshin, who was an Eastern European rabbi in the Musar movement. And interestingly, this was discovered by Nancy Sinkoff, a professor of history at Rutgers. It's based partially, at least, on the work of Benjamin Franklin. And that Benjamin Franklin, in 18th century America, wrote his own little ethical books. And parts of that book are Benjamin Franklin translated into Jewish, basically. So thank you, Benjamin Franklin, and the rest of the founding fathers for this session. We're actually not going to be looking at that book because the book is like a whole manual, a whole practice and process that it would take a while to actually work our way through. But what I wanted to look at instead were texts drawn from a wide range of materials that I think set the groundwork for what it means to engage in this kind of practice, to front and to underscore the importance of what it means to have a good sense of who you are. Because it is you, right? You are the object of your attention, and you are the subject of Teshuvah, right? You are the one who is both doing the work, but also the one that is being worked on. And if we are to say that we are supposed to engage with this process, with integrity and with fullness, then we need to also make sure to be able to that we're bringing our full selves into it. So in that light, let's start looking at the texts. You see a link. I'll post one more time for, I think someone else just signed in. But I will open it now and we can share screen so everyone will see it. All right, there we go. Cool. Does everyone see it? Great. This is technically the editing version of it. So you're seeing how the sausage gets made, because it's the only way I can figure out for the sheet to display side by side. Because once I want to share it as a display, it goes top and bottom, which is annoying. So there we go. Okay. So with beautiful Hasidic teaching from a book called Hasidim Misaprim, Hasidim tell of this, in the name of Rabbunim, Simcha Bunim Prishischa, who is a rabbi that was renowned for the importance that he ascribed to authenticity, to being true. Indeed, actually, a very sweet book written by the late Rabbi Mikey Rosen of Yakar in Jerusalem is called The Quest for Authenticity. Very, very, very nice book. I really do recommend it, especially appropriate for this time of year. And the saying is this, in the name of Rabbanim, and you shall love God with all your heart, right? Love God with your whole heart, and not with the heart or qualities of another. Whose heart are we supposed to be loving God with? Yours. It's your heart that you're supposed to love God with. For someone who serves God with another's heart is like an idolater. You know, there's another famous teaching ascribed to Reb Zusha, who is the brother of Reb Elimelech, and it said, when you die, God forbid, when you die, God's not going to ask you, why weren't you like Moshe Rabbeinu? God's going to ask you, why weren't you like Reb Zusha? Now, we all came into this world on purpose. There's a reason for all of our existences, and our task in some way is to be the fullest and most real version of ourselves that we can be. But for that to be the case, then we need to do the kind of inspecting work of what it means to figure out, who are we? What are we doing? Am I meeting my potential? Am I meeting my purpose? Am I matching to it? Or am I living in a way in which I'm expecting things that are unreasonable to expect on myself? Or I am not living up to the challenge of what it sometimes means to be alive, to be you. It's not an accident that we're here with our particular challenges, but rather it's a program. And it's a program that we're supposed to go through to work out. So I want to go back to this text in the Rambam that we saw before, because we focused before on the spiritual alarm clock element of the shofar. But we kind of broke off from the text after that. But right after the shofar, he outlines what this process is supposed to look like. So can I get a brave volunteer to read this text again? We'll start just from, it's ye that sleep, bestir yourselves. So someone who really wants to read in like a Shakespearean accent, please. Please, don't make me beg. Hitherto and therefore. Yeah, Katerina, I saw you on mute. You can't take that back. There we go.
Ye that sleep, bestir yourselves from your sleep, and ye slumbering, emerge from your slumber.
Yea, verily.
Examine your conduct, turn in repentance, and remember your Creator. They that forget the truth because of the vanities of the times, who err all of their years by pursuing vanity and idleness, which are of neither benefit nor of salvation, care for your souls, improve your ways and your tendencies. Let each one of you abandon his evil path and his thought which is not pure.
Okay, great. Take a pause. That was great. That was very mellifluously done. But let's pick it apart because we're doing this in English that itself needs translation, which means it's a successful translating job. Good job, translators. All right. So again, Rambam is using this metaphor of sleep and wake, right? That seems like normal life. It's so easy. It's kind of like you sit in one position for a long time and your leg falls asleep, right? You live your life in some ways unconsciously and your soul falls asleep. You're just kind of sitting, you're not intervening on yourself, and your soul takes a nap. And the key is for the shofar is to jolt us awake and to wake us up and to get us moving. But it gets us moving, again, we talked about this before, that if your face is like pressed up against a wall, you can't see the wall. because you need distance to be able to see something. You can't be inside of it to see it. You need to have distance from it. So the shofar blasts us, moves us, so that we can have perspective on ourselves. And then we're supposed to look at ourselves. So it says, examine your conduct, turn in repentance, and remember your Creator. So we have, I think, three aspects here. We have a psychological aspect, we have a practical aspect, an actional aspect, and there's a spiritual aspect. Right, so we're supposed to look at the habits, the tendencies that we've accreted, and things like that. There is the act of tshuva, which we're talking about, but also then there's the spiritual, soulful element in which part of the way to reframe your perspective is to try to foreground something that's so easy to lose sight of, namely the standard of value in our lives, which is the Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is God. Right? God is serving as in this way is as a reminder to us to live truly, to live truthfully, to live with integrity, and to live meaningful lives. That there is a God means that there is what that is expected from us. Right? That there is a God means that your life is meaningful. I'm not making like an anti-atheism argument here. I think more I'm trying to make a functional definition of what a belief in God means. Or maybe you can even flip it around. You can say to live a meaningful life, to live as if your life is meaningful, is then in some ways a theological position to take. It is a position to take to say, I am living towards something. I am living for the sake of something. And in Jewish language, you would say for someone. And there's a relational element here that is brought in. We talked about this before. We had our session about individualism and isolation, appropriate for quarantine. We're alone with ourselves, but also to be alone with ourselves is to then, at the same time, to be alone with that stillness and to be alone with God. To learn how to live with that relation in mind. Right? And it's so easy to forget, right? They that forget the truth because of the vanities of the times. Now, I think, you could take that to mean, in very judgy language, but I think part of what he's saying is that it's very easy to get caught up in short-term issues, right? The day-to-day things, the stuff that seems urgent, but is not necessarily meaningful. Is anyone familiar with the work of David Allen? He wrote a book called Getting Things Done. It's like one of these, the world where Musser is right now, and sadly in some ways is in the corporate world. But it's a book called Getting Things Done. And in it, he says, we have to divide our tasks that we need to do between, he kind of says, make a 4-quadrant chart. Make a, what's it called? Who's the mathematician for the chart? I forget. All right, make a chart, right? And the criterion are urgent and important, not urgent and not important, right? So something can be urgent and important. Those things demand our attention. Something can be urgent, but not important, right? Those things we do need to get done because they are urgent, but they don't demand a lot of thinking about because they don't deserve, in a sense, our attention that much. We just need to get them done. There are things that are important but not urgent, and those are the hardest things to stay faithful to. Right? Things that don't feel like they're pressure on us, but things that are meaningful and things that are valuable. And they're so easy to kick the can down the road and say, well, I've got a lot on my plate right now. I'm tired or whatever, right? I'm captain of these excuses. I have a list of projects that I want to get done because they're things that are meaningful to me. But in a way, but but the question is, do you prioritize them, right? Do you make the time in your day for the things that are up to you to value? The world isn't telling you that they're important. You are. And the question, in a way, is, are you going to listen to yourself? Right? I think actually even Rambam gets at that in a sense, because he says part of this practice isn't just looking at yourself and judging yourself, but also you make a judgment, but it's a judgment, it's a judgment for your well-being, right? Look at the things that you're doing, which are neither benefit nor of salvation, right? Look at the things that you're up to. Is it working any better right now? I was saying it's freezy. Rats.
It's on and off. It's like kind of every other sentence.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
Fudge.
Keep going. Well,
Yeah,
you know.
I'm just trying to quit other programs to free up some RAM. Hopefully that'll help. Okay, is that a little bit better? Okay. So part of this practice is Rambam is saying, is to make sure that we are bringing a sense of our own valuation into our life, not just to live in a way in which things are just processing automatically, but to pay attention to the things that we do, the things that we say are important, and to ask ourselves, are they? Are they actually important? Are they actually valuable for us? Are they helping to enrich our lives? Or are they ultimately a waste of time? I think something that actually really struck me here, which I wonder if he actually got from the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, is this notion of what maybe an early medieval version of self-care. Because what he's talking about, again, isn't just like this. I think often the work of Teshuvah is looked at in a very kind of diminishing way as being self-judgment. But I think self-care or self-cultivation is a better way of thinking about what Teshuvah can mean. Because what we are doing is we are taking up our life, we are taking up our soul as an object of our concern, and we're taking care of it. We're paying attention to it to make sure that it is healthy, that it's doing well, that it's healthy, that it's doing well, that it's fulfilling its purpose. Right? We're attending to it as an object of care, which I think is actually a really striking reframing of what Teshuvah is. It is like you are a physical therapist, but for your soul. Right? Teshuvah as a therapeutic act. Teshuvah as a therapeutic act. Teshuvah as an attention to the kinds of wounds or harm, in a sense, that your soul has undergone. I'm going to try to switch internets. 1 second. Hopefully it doesn't sign off. If it does, please sign back on. I am really sorry about this. Stupid internet. Okay, 1 second. Am I still signed in? Is this better?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Wait.
Maybe I've been saved. All right. So I think I'm trying to reframe Teshuvah as kind of what I call soul therapy, spiritual therapy, is the way I'm putting it. That it is like a physiotherapist, I think, would test your body to see the ways in which it is your leg can't move right, or your hip has like a tightness in it or something like that, right? We look at our soul and we actually try to look at the ways in which it is atrophied, right? It has fallen out of disuse, or if it is impacted because of a lack of use, because of a lack of healthy use. And And that hopefully will give us a light forward to then work on what it means for self-improvement. Okay. Thoughts? What would a soul therapy look like for you?
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Well, I think before you know like a solution to something, you have to know kind of like what's broken. So first, I feel like I would need to know more about how a soul can be like atrophied, like you said, like what that would look like. And then, no, Siri, go away. Sorry. And then, yeah, and from there, I could maybe, I don't even know what soul therapy would look like for me because I don't fully understand the other part. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could say something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I think it would be sort of looking into yourself. What hurts you? What do you truly, truly regret? And what don't you like about where you're at? And where do you want to see yourself? Like, how could you improve yourself to be the person that you really want to be without being blocked spiritually or being held back by regrets, you know, anger, other things that are soul blockers?
Yeah. Yeah, so you're saying pay attention to emotional habits or to traits, and to be able then to get some kind of judgment about what are the kinds of traits or what are the kinds of features of my behavior that are things that serve me and what are aspects that don't. What are things that I tend to do that will be, what are things that I tend to do that will be ways for my life to be enlarged and enlivened, and what are things for me to do which are ways for my life, actually my soul ends up feeling constricted or foreshortened?
What, oh, okay, Josh is back. What would you prefer we call you?
I think Shosh, but today I was just like, whatever, put Constanza. Yeah, there was.
You guys all like, okay, it's still recording. This is so weird. I hope you guys all
We're gonna have fun watching this
through
after.
this experience of strife. I think this will work better. I think using the non-5G internet hopefully will work better. 5G, it causes coronavirus and it keeps the shear from processing correctly. Kidding, 5G does not create coronavirus. This is working. Yes, everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
For
good.
now.
Okay. Cool. So, shkoyach to all of you for your chizik. I appreciate it. Hopefully Sarah finds us again. I think we lost one, but who can blame her? I'm really sorry about this. I'm gonna try sharing screen again. Hopefully this will work okay. If not, if that is maybe part of the issue, then maybe actually we'll keep this kind of Hollywood Squares style version going, and everyone can have the sources up for themselves. Okay.
I can share, or I can share it again like last week.
Yeah, you have better internet, so maybe that's not a.
Maybe not always.
No, you probably do. I'm gonna try it again, but again, if we get freezy, then we'll at least know what to do. Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. So, good. Okay. Cool. Who knows? Maybe heaven is trying to prevent me from revealing the secrets. So I think the questions that were posed in that brief discussion, I think, are really valuable ones. Namely, what criteria can we apply to our souls, right? How do we get a sense of judgment? How do we get a sense of what is working for us and what doesn't? On one hand, we can say, okay, there are probably best habits and practices that probably serve everybody. There are things that are not good to do, and there are things that are good to do. It's bad to be, I don't know, mean. It's good to be nice, except that it's probably bad to be nice if it let's say is part of an enabling relationship, right? It's bad to be nice if you are never telling a child that their, let's say, destructive behavior is worthy of censure, right? Being nice to someone who does mean things is, so like we see the ways in which like there are never universals, right? Let's say being patient is good, except being patient when it comes to, let's say, injustice or the suffering of people, less good, right? So like we know that ethics and personality traits are all situational in some way or another. And not only that, but we are living in time and space. So in some ways, the question is not just what is good for me particularly, but what is good for me in this time in my life. So really, Cheshbon haNefesh isn't just about like looking at the static object that we can call our psyche or our soul or our personality, or even like a record of our deeds. It is looking at the dynamic object of what our life is, right? It is looking at living. It is looking at our living and trying to take an account of it and prescribe, I think, what we can do in our lives to bring more fulfillment into it. And again, that is so how do we get that perspective, right? What do we know? How do we know what we need to work on is maybe another way of putting it. That's how I took Shosh's question. Like, what does soul therapy look like in the abstract? Sure, but also like, what does therapy for my soul look like, which is really the active question. So here we have some wisdom from Rebbe Nachman from literally a book he wrote called A Collection of Advice, Likutei Eitzos, in which he, I think, gives what I would call maybe an imminent answer to this, or a receptive answer to this. So let's look at this. Okay. And we looked at this metaphor also last week. So again, a good incentive to review. If one merits to feel truly, no more splitting infinitives, to feel truly the pain of one's mistakes, after having circumcised the husk of your heart, right? We talked about that last week, that there's this metaphor we see in Devarim and Vayelech, if I remember correctly, about circumcise the flesh of your heart. And by that, what it seems to me is to maximize the surface area of the sensitive nature of your heart, right? Your heart is covered with an unfeeling husk, and we cut it away and we peel it away so that we have exposed the sensitive, fleshy surface of our heart, the part of our heart that has nerve endings, right? We've re-nervicized ourselves. We've gotten away the mediating, attenuating blockages of our heart, and we've maximized the surface area of what it can feel. Right now, it is a throbbing nerve ending. Okay, so circumcise the husk of your heart such that one's heart truly feels the extent of that pain, upset and remorseful. One will return with true Teshuvah. So the key of circumcising your heart is to resensitize yourself to the world, yes, but also to yourself. That your heart becomes an internal sensor for how you're doing. It is as simple as saying you circumcised your heart so that you realize you're feeling bad about something. Now, I don't mean to say again, like we should scourge ourselves or something, but the point is that I think a lot of life and a lot of what keeps us from changing, from what keeps us from Teshuvah, is the fact that we can't face the fact that we feel bad about something. So we turn away from it. We turn down the volume on it. I mean, it's very hard to have the resilience to face that sense of remorse, that sense of guilt, that sense of embarrassment, shame, frustration, resentment even of yourself, right? Not all of these are productive feelings. I think contemporary pop psych culture wants us to go the other way. It's like, oh, if you're feeling bad about yourself, that's never good. It's never helpful. I don't think every feeling bad about yourself is like something you should like steer into necessarily, but it is a really important, let's say, spark for your attention about the fact that you're dissatisfied with something. And that's important. That you're not happy about something in your life. And you should have a life in which you don't feel that way. Now, and the answer to that then isn't to beat yourself up about feeling bad. It's actually to celebrate the fact that you feel bad, because that's the first step to change. Because you have then developed a critical relationship with the status quo. And only by having that critical relationship can you institute some kind of change. So then all the hearts will feel the droplets which have emitted their figurative children. Now, interestingly, Rabbi Nachman has a bit of what I think Derrida would call phallocentrism. And because we're using this metaphor of circumcision, the heart is then likened to a genitalia, male genitalia specifically, which issue or emit their seed. We don't need to dwell on this metaphor too much. Rabbi Nachman sure does, though, but whatever. But I think actually even if it's icky or it's patriarchal or what have you, I think actually it has some really important insight, namely that what we do is genetic. Now, I don't mean like it's all your parents' fault, mom, but what I do mean is that it's genetic in the sense that it produces results, right? What we do has an impact on the world. Much like parents have children, our actions bear consequences. And resensitizing our heart is actually then reconnecting ourselves not just with the source of our activity, but with its results. And that's a way to do a certain kind of Cheshbon haNefesh. It is like you are expected in family court. Everyone during Elul is a deadbeat dad. And what we all need to do is start paying child support again. Because we're not. We're like blowing money on ski-doos or whatever it is that people blow money on instead of their kids' nutrition. We pay attention to our children again, maybe for the first time. Namely, we pay attention to not just what we're doing, but we're able to gain a perspective about what it is that we've been doing because of the results that it's been having in the world. The children our actions have been bearing. Right? We look around our life and we're like, oh, I don't have the friends that I want. I'm not happy with my job right now. I feel frustrated in my home relationships. Now, you can either just be resentful of those, or you can say, those are results in which I can trace them back in some way to the ways that I've contributed to them. I'm unhappy with my friendships. Well, let's look at the kinds of choices I've been making in terms of the people I've decided to surround myself with, or the ways I've acted in those friendships. Have I been living up to my role as a friend? I feel frustrated at my job. Well, let's take a minute. Let's do what Husserl calls an epoche. Let's bracket this and say, okay, well, let's look at it. Why am I frustrated with my job? What about my job is frustrating? What do I want to be? What do I want to be looking at and attending to? Shosh brings up a great point that there's, the phallocentric nature of Rabbi Nachman's discourse is, I think, one of the reasons it's especially powerful amongst young men, teens and 20s. Not only that, but the entire Hasidic movement. Actually, like a lot of new religious movements, historically speaking, were the product of young men. I don't mean to say that because in a society in which young people especially have less to do because the economy is screwed up, or because society is falling apart in some way, young men are the ones who are shifting around and don't know what to do with themselves and become agents of interesting change. So the Hasidic movement is an aspect of that. A lot of young men were either running away from getting married or hadn't gotten married yet, or had a lot of pressure about getting married, hence a lot of tension around sexual stuff. But also if you look right now, if you look at our life right now, Reddit, 4chan, 8chan, incels, which are, agents of negative change largely in our society, but are good examples of what happens when society chews up people, spits them out, and the people who tend to kind of foment about that tend to be young men. And I think there's a lot of lack of compassion for these people. That obviously I don't agree with patriarchal misogyny and violence and things like this. But I think the way to actually bring change and bring healing to society is to react in this kind of therapeutic way, to actually try to figure out like, the economy is awful. Like, these young men are hopeless. There's rising amounts of suicide amongst young men actually right now. It's the most frequent cause of death that's not heart disease or cancer in the Midwest. It's like that's a crisis, right? But instead people just want to yell at people. Instead, we could actually take a page out of Rabbi Nachman's book and say, okay, well, let's actually, what would it mean to attend to our hearts? What would it mean to give attention and to give space to what's hurting? What would it mean to begin from a place, I think, of healing and a sense of worth? That when we're hurting, it's worth paying attention to. And spiritual life is actually learning about how to give value to that heart pain. Not to judge it or to send it away, but to actually let it have a voice and let it wake up. And he says actually that there will be a chain reaction, that once one heart is awoken, other hearts will reverberate. And I think that is true about what it means to be in a spiritual community, for that to have the support to be able to do that together, but also to live a more awoken life. To be more woke is actually, I think, to have that kind of reverberating effect on other people as well, that we're in a network, we're all connected. So, yeah, okay, we can go down a very interesting rabbit hole. If people are interested actually in Rabbi Nachman, especially a psychological analysis of Rabbi Nachman, there's a fantastic book, although a bit dated in its methodology now because it's a little bit too daring in its psychoanalyses. It's a little bit too like diagnosis oriented, which maybe you can't do when you didn't ever know somebody and they're hundreds of years in the past. And all you have is books that they wrote and really actually their secretary wrote, but whatever. It's fantastic. The book still holds up. It's called Tormented Master by Arthur Green. And it's a really sensitive and deep analysis of Rabbi Nachman and his Torah.
Is that Arthur Green who wrote Radical Judaism?
Yep, same guy.
Okay.
Yep, he's the rector, I think, of the rabbinical school at Hebrew College now, but he was for a long time a professor at University of Pennsylvania, then Brandeis, and was faculty of Reconstructionist Rabbinical College as well. Good tea. Okay. Weiter, forward. So we had because of I don't want to keep us too long, so I think maybe we'll skip. Well, actually, I'll look at this. This is a very interesting text that I wanted to spend like a minute reframing, but I'm going to be a little bit more frontal instead of more discussion oriented. I say, so Rava, and some people say Rav Chisda said, when somebody sees suffering come upon them, what you should do is scrutinize your actions. As I said, let us search and try our ways. Test our ways and return to God. And if one has scrutinized your actions without discovering the cause, then figure out actually ways when it says it's neglect of Torah. Of course, it's a rabbinic text. Everything is about neglect of Torah, we know, because Torah is the best schira, right? Torah is the best reward. Torah is the best business. So I think, this is often taken in a kind of a theological tit for tat kind of way. Namely, if you have what are called yisurin in this world, if you have suffering, if you're experiencing suffering, then see the way in which it's your fault. Now, I think that is often an unhelpful framework for it. So I actually want to intervene and try to offer a different reframing. I think this is actually quite similar in some ways to Rabbi Nachman's point. Namely, if you are unhappy, it is worthwhile for you to look at your life and to take account of it. Because if you are living a life in which it is upsetting or disappointing or frustrating, then it is not only valuable or pragmatic for you to look at your life and try to take responsibility for yourself, to look for ways in which you can impact and impart change. But also, I would say the other element of this, and this is actually where we're moving, is it's empowering. For you to look at your, now I don't mean to say like, things that are like, if you are experiencing like structural oppression, like look to see how it's your fault. But if you look at your individual personal life and it is suffering to you, you are suffering in it, you are frustrated, disappointed, or upset, then it redounds to our benefit to learn, I think, and to figure out ways in which we can own it, to be critical, to take a critical account of where we are, and for that to actually do the diagnostic of what it means that needs to change. It is, I think it's an activist point. It can't be the case that all we have in this life is doom. Even in this is in the work of Viktor Frankl in his logotherapy in his work Man's Search for Meaning, is that all we have in this world is the life that we're given. All we're able to change is ourselves. We could bang our fists against the wall to ask, why isn't the world the way I want it to be? And I think that's a very important thing to do, namely to look critically at the world and say, what is it that actually demands my attention? What needs to change? But when it comes to my life, that is actually something I'm able to impact. I'm able to impart change to. I'm able to take up my life and intervene in it. I can have a meaningful, purposive life and no one can stop me because it's in my control. It's in my venue, it's in my ambit to figure out what it is that is valuable and worthwhile to me. And it is available to me to figure out how it is that I'm able to bring my life closer to that. How can I bring my life closer to what I want it to be? Okay. So I think we're going to look at this text outside instead of inside. But here in Tinus 11a, there's a fascinating text in which it's going through a bunch of interesting passages about judgment. And it says, at the hour of your death, we're right here. Oops, don't move, rats. It says, at the hour of a person's death, all of your deeds are enumerated before you. What do you take that to mean? Susie, you're muted.
Just that your life gets reviewed for you or with you?
Yeah, but yes, for sure. At the end, everything becomes clear, right? At the end, right? I mean, like this is what an example of something we're going to look at very soon, namely that at the end of your life, there is a Cheshbon haNefesh. That you are asked to, in the words of Albert Brooks, defend your life, right? You must, but not only that, but what death is, in a sense, is a completing of the book. And all of the things then are finished. Everything's inscribed in the book. And everything is then listed before you. What is Teshuvah then? Teshuvah is a refusal to wait for death. Teshuvah is the insistence that we can, in a sense, live life from the perspective of death. I don't mean that, I mean, that's the most life-affirming thing you can do. You live life with radical knowledge that it is finite, that it will end. And you look back on each moment from the perspective of eternity. Teshuvah is a refusal to wait for death to do that work for you. Instead, Teshuvah is a doing of that work now. It is enumerating all of the things before you now. It is realizing that that this life will end, and that imbues each moment with radical significance. And you can't wait for it to end to realize that. But we can actually imbue that significance in every moment of life by realizing. You know, it's funny, like, Teshuvah is associated also with the world to come. And like Shabbos is a taste of the world to come in this world, like a life apart from life, Teshuvah is a different kind of aspect of the world to come. It is life after life. You know, you're daring to say, okay, that was me then, but who is me now? You die to yourself to be reborn. You say, okay, who I have been does not need to be who I need to be. I get to decide that. My life is going to testify for me, and I need to take responsibility for what that will mean. At the end, someone's going to read the book, and I want it to be good. I want it to be a good book. I mean, fascinatingly, it says actually earlier in the Chidushei Agados of the Maharsha, who is a commentary on the non-legal aspects of the Talmud. He says, when we say all of one's deeds are enumerated before you, saying this and this did they do, it says that's written elsewhere is actually on the same daf of the Gemara, there are two angels who are created by the bad things one will done, I mean bad things and good things, and will testify for you. So earlier, right, Shosh was asking, how are we able to figure out what we need to do? And Rebbe Nachman starts us off by saying what we need to do is we need to resensitize ourselves. We need to start to pay better attention to what we're feeling. We need to turn up the volume, or turn up the sensitivity of our heart, which is then able to sense the vibes in our soul, right? If we turn up that heart, then what is the heart realizing it needs to do? What is the heart realizing what is wrong, right? The heart is this like, it's like a, what's it called? It's like an antenna, right? And it's receiving these transmissions of our soul. And the question is, what's being recorded? And I think this is the point here too, right? Is that our life tells us what we need to do. Our soul knows the score. Our body even knows the score. So the Brisa says, when a person says, oh, I have acted in secret, who's going to testify against me? The Tana says, the stones of your house and the beams of your home will testify against you. Now, in other words, it says, like, the point it's making is that there's nothing that's secret, right? God knows the inner recesses of our heart, fine. But I think part of the point is also the life that we build is going to testify for us. I don't mean like, did you like remodel your kitchen? God will judge that backsplash. But rather, the home that you've built, right? The life that you've constructed is proof positive, is evidence of the self that you are right now, right? We objectify ourselves in the world that we create A person's soul will testify. And even some say a person's limbs will testify. You are my witnesses, says God. Right? I really want to, I think that what this is in some ways is an ancient form of therapeutics. That we pay attention to what's hurting. Rabbi Nachman started by saying, okay, The heart is the antenna. The heart is the diagnostician. The heart is the organ whose role is to sensitize and to detect, to sense what it is that we're feeling bad about. But we have aches and pains in our life that tell us what's hurting, right? We know to go to the doctor because something feels off. How do we know that? We're not doctors, right? And no, think about it. Our bodies have this internal wisdom. You know something feels weird when something feels weird. You eat noodles that have gone bad. You know something's wrong very quickly. One of the things that's really disturbing about coronavirus is that it has a delayed symptoms, right? That takes 3 to 5 days for symptoms to appear. That's what's made it very challenging for a public health perspective, because we don't know when we're sick with this damn thing. But that's challenging because usually we do, right? We know when like our ankle is off. We know when our tummy's feeling weird. We know when we're feeling dizzy. We know when we don't have as much energy as we usually do. I don't mean to say like always we do, but like that is actually that's like the body's wisdom of life, right? We learn to pay attention and to figure out what's normal and what's not normal for ourselves. And I think that is exactly the kind of diagnostic behavior that Teshuvah is talking about. We treat our souls the same way. We treat our lives the same way. Pay attention to when there's a twinge in our life when we're walking upstairs, right? Pay attention to when our life feels irpy after we've had bad noodles, whatever the bad noodles are for your soul. Shoshechi, do you want to say that out loud? I think that's a really great point.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that like this culture, Western culture, has done, I think, purposefully disconnected people from their bodies. So that makes any of this almost inconceivable unless you've reconnected somehow, I guess.
For sure. I mean, I would say like sometimes pharmacological therapeutics are very, very important for people who need meds. But it's also clearly the case that our society incentivizes prescribing meds to feel less in a lot of ways, or to, actually it's very interesting is that, like, what are the drugs that people use now? In the 60s, you know, tune in, turn on, drop out, you know, drop out thing. Like the drugs were actually ways to, in some ways, have a different perspective on life, to resist the status quo. What are the drugs that are typical of this moment? Drugs that make it easier for people to work longer. Adderall. Is Focus in a real one, or is that just in The Simpsons? I forget. But drugs that make it easier for people to work longer hours. And I think, and Chosh is quite right, actually, to not to like kind of use amphetamines to actually desensitize ourselves to ourselves.
That's a misuse of amphetamines.
For sure.
It's not yeah, just so you know, it's a misuse.
Oh, no, for sure. No, amphetamines are very important for prescribing for ADHD and things like that.
ADHD, yeah.
No.
I'm a pharmacist, so I'm very sensitive to that.
So the Rebbe speaks. No, that's the thing, right? But like, but I mean, it's not an accident, you know. And what's the plague of our current moment in Canada, in America? Again, another symptom of like an ailing society is opiates and opioids, right? Drugs whose purpose is to kill pain. And that's, people are hurting all the time and they can't bear it and they need drugs to numb themselves to it. I'm not saying this in any kind of judgmental way. It is a tragedy that we have a world that is not giving people the opportunity and not supporting people in what it means to heal, and not giving people the chance to live lives that are healthier. Yeah, Susie?
Oh, I was thinking that we don't even have to go so extreme as to like prescription medications. I mean, even just like COVID, like the explosion of people making bread, like we, you know, carb loading and eating our feelings, and, you know, like trying to lower our stress levels through comfort food. But then our society is trying to counteract that with like meditation retreats and yoga and like,
right,
instead of just it being a natural part of life, you have to go and learn to do these things, right?
That's a great point. right? There is kind of like a Band-Aid that, again, also like a lot of these things, especially done within a business context, are used for ways to not pay for people's health insurance, right? Ways to like say, okay, like, yeah, start doing yoga in the office. This is an America thing, but like start doing yoga in the office, but no, we're not going to work for better benefits. What it does though, is it does think about it in terms of stress, which I think is a really helpful way to think of psychological questions. It puts more work now on the individual to take care of themselves, to provide for things that structures in society have, maybe I would say, the responsibility to do instead. When instead, actually, what we really need is the energy and the attention to be able to do real serious work. Like Maslow's pyramid of human needs is actually really, I think, a really important framework, not as like some kind of slavish thing to pay attention to, but rather to say, societies, I think, owe it to their members to be able to provide for as many of the bottom levels as they can, so that every human being is able to do teshuvah. You can't do teshuvah if you're worried about where your next meal is coming from. You can't do teshuvah if you're worried about, you can't do teshuvah if you're like falling apart psychologically. Everyone deserves health. Everyone deserves support to be able to then do the holy work of what it means to do the work of change. Wow, a lot of activity in the chat. Bad noodles for the soul. You are welcome to use it. You are only people in this class. Welcome. All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Only good noodles. No, but I really like, we are stressed out all the time. There's a book I've been meaning to read called Exhaustion, A History, right? Like, we are all tired all the time now. We are all like, depression is rampant right now. Anxiety is rampant right now. And instead, I mean, what y'all have been saying in this discussion is just right. Instead of using those things as lights on the way towards change, instead, we just need to turn it down. We have to ignore it, because we can't say, oh wait, our entire society is in pain. Our entire society is depressed and it needs healing. No, we can't circumcise the foreskin of our heart for that. Instead, we need to push forward, push on, not actually give ourselves the things that we need, which is in some ways a form of social or societal, I think, self-loathing or hatred. We deserve kindness and we deserve care. I think that actually is the name of the book is Exhaustion. It's by Anna Katharina Schaffner. There's another book also by a guy named Shorter called How We All Became Depressed. Also worth reading. Point of this, though, is that like this is, I think, a human right. Every human, I think this is what Teshuvah is telling us. The most important work in our lives is this work of care for the soul. And everyone deserves the support that they need to be able to do that work. To pay attention to where they are, who they are, what they are, and to have the opportunity and have the energy to be able to do that kind of work of self-change. I'm going to leave this Rabbi Nachman text for later. I think this, I want to, that one, it will come up in a future class instead. I think it is an incredible text. But on this point, beautiful, radical teaching from Levi Yitzchak, from Yaakov Yosef Plnoya, who was one of the Baal Shem Tov's disciples. Would someone read this first paragraph? This is from the Nesivos Sholem, which was a 20th century book. It was written by Shalom Noach Berezovsky of Slonim, who was the Slonim Rebbe living in Bnei Brak, if I remember correctly, in Israel, 20th century. He wrote it in modern Israeli Hebrew. So if someone's looking for a Hasidic text, it unfortunately is not translated. I think someone's starting to translate it, but if someone's looking for like a good entry into Hasidic learning, this is often the book I recommend, because it's not written in what is called in the academy typically poor Hasidic Hebrew. It's written in like very lucid modern Hebrew. And because of that, then the access to it is a little bit more available. So would someone care to read this first part, and then we'll take a break and we'll discuss?
I can read.
Great, Lauren, please.
Okay, according to this, we can understand why Rosh Hashanah is called the day of our celebration. And on it, we wear shining white clothes and bless Shehechianu.
Okay, so wait, what's the kasha?
The question?
Yeah, what's the problem? Right? Traditional learning is done in kasha and teruts, right? There's a problem that's being posed, and then he's going to try to figure out the answer. So what's the problem he's posing?
Why is Rosh Hashanah called the day of our celebration?
Good. Okay, that's one aspect of it. And because you might think, which we're going to get, why is it called Yom Chagenu? Because what else is it called? Yinei Yom Hadin.
Yom Hadin.
Right? It's the day of judgment.
Yeah.
So Rosh Hashanah, it's a fascinating thing. Rosh Hashanah is a very ambivalent holiday. It's got this judgment aspect, but it also is a day of monarchical celebration, of regality. And it's not a fast day. Rosh Hashanah is like when we have the best food.
It's
wear
celebratory.
The fanciest hats to shul. Right? So why is it such a fancy day? And you're supposed to dress like you're seeing the king.
Right, don't forget we're also celebrating that this is the day that human beings were created.
Yes, good. Hayom Haras Olam. Yes, the day of the creation.
So it's the highest point of Hashem's creation. If we want to be human-centric, my cat may not agree. She would say that cats are the greatest creation.
Right.
But and I may agree with her, but I think that's a good part of what we're celebrating. We're celebrating creation and the creation of human beings.
Beautiful. I think that actually brings us back to our original point, right? Is that, I mean, actually, we're going to get very, very good, great intuitive point. Rosh Hashanah is the day of the birth of human life. And we commit to that, I think, by taking ownership of our lives in their being renewed. All right, so we're going to see this right now, okay? This is a radical teaching. This is incredible. I'm very excited that we're getting to this. All right, so the reason is what, Lauren?
So, okay, so the reason is because it's a day of renewal of the covenant between the Holy One and Israel. It is understood what Nehemiah the prophet said to the people. Today is a holy one for the Lord your God. Do not mourn and do not weep. Go, eat rich foods and drink sweet wine.
Right, bust out your Manischewitz.
I'd rather have
or
a
your
really
Barton
good
Nora.
Merlot. But if you live in Israel, you have access to really great wine.
Wine in Israel tastes like raisin juice. Disgusting. Okay.
Oh, no. Have you had Tishbe and all the really great Merlots and Shiraz? And anyways, the people's original take on that day was that it was a day of judgment of the past. And their crying was that of mourning, crying over what was ruined and cannot be fixed. But Rosh Hashanah is a day on which the covenant is contracted anew. And on it, each Jew crowns God as king.
All right, there's a lot in here, and I want to take it piece by piece. So the Havamina, right, what people originally thought Rosh Hashanah should have been, theoretically, is Yom Hadin. It's just Yom Hadin, day of judgment. And think of it this way. It's a day of judgment because it's about the past. It's as if we've died. And it's over. And your life is done. And you've ruined it. You've wrecked it. You screwed up, kid. Right? And you have no hope anymore because you have no chance to change it. But it's not about the past. It's Mechadash. Rosh Hashanah is about the year to come. Rosh Hashanah is not the last day of the year. Well, it is, but but it bridges into the first day of the year. It is a bridge from the end to the beginning. It is not the last day of the year in which we condemn the year's failures. It is the first day of the new year in which we set intentions for what we want it to be. It is about the future. Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, the beginning of a new chance, a new lease on life. It is the first day of the rest of your life. That's Rosh Hashanah. Because in a sense it says, like the punks of old, no past. There is no past. Only thing we have is the future. Past doesn't exist. Show me the past. You can't. Only thing we can actually attend to is the future. The past is useful insofar as it provides us useful knowledge about what's gotten us to this point. But it is not the fullness of life. Life moves into the future.
But Josh, isn't there also some pressure from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur that's the 10 days, if you let a rule slip by somewhat, and you still have that time period that you're supposed to be repenting and repairing and
Yeah, for sure. I think right, and I think a lot of this, the point of this class in some ways is to say that yes, and Teshuvah is a life affirming practice, because Teshuvah, and that's why I don't like the notion of the definition of repentance. Teshuvah isn't about repentance. Teshuvah is about change. Remorse and feeling penitent about something is a motivator to make change in your life. But Teshuvah is spurred on by penitence, but it is more than that. It is the work of change. Teshuvah is a commitment to the future you that can be, not a condemnation of the you that was. Rav Kook, who actually we'll talk about in the last session of this series, on Yom Kippur we have the vidui, right? We have the confession where we say all of the sins. Ashamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu, right? He actually had a positive vidui that he would also say of a positive act for each of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet as well. I think it's a really beautiful kind of bringing of Rosh Hashanah energy into Yom Kippur. But I think something besides, so Rosh Hashanah is about the future. It is about learning from the past to become the person you want to be in the future. But interestingly, the point of Rosh Hashanah is agency. I think Lauren's point about the creation of the human is quite right, because we, in a sense, we crown God as king. We think, oh, yeah, Rosh Hashanah is the day in which God is judging us. But it says, "Mi beladecha ein lanu melech," right? Without you, God, there is no king. Fine, but ein melech below am. There is no king without a nation. Right? This is Hegelian dialectics. What is a king without a nation? Just a delusional person. To be a king, it only makes sense for you to have a nation, which means it is the nation that makes the king. On Rosh Hashanah, this is actually a beautiful Torah from Pachad Yitzchak, the Rav Yitzchak Hutner, who is called the Rosh Yeshiva Chaim Berlin, in the Lower East Side in the early 20th century. He wrote, and kind of probably because he was living in America, I think he learned this from American democracy, that on Rosh Hashanah, we renew the kingship of God. We re-elect God as king. There's something immensely empowering about Rosh Hashanah, because we are taking an active role in what it means for us to be in a relationship with God, for God to be in a relationship with us. And I think thus then, that puts us in a very active and proactive role in terms of what it means for us to have a relationship with ourselves. Yeah, we're gonna bring in the positive vidui probably when we do Rav Kook in the last session. Okay, Maxine, do you want to say about the personal agency in Teshuvah? I think that's quite right.
Right. I guess, in Teshuvah, you're really taking personal responsibility in what you're doing. It's a really I guess, intentional way of moving through life. And I feel like, often the time with, when you get into theory about, sometimes even like theoretical physics, but a lot of the time in theology, you can get into kind of the problem of determinism and, if God is all powerful, then what can we really do? But, being asked to go through the process of Teshuvah really kind of brings our own work and our own power into the picture.
I think that's quite right. I think Teshuvah is a practice of intention and attention, right? I think what we were looking at before is turning our hearts into an organ that can pay attention to how we're doing, right? To be sensitive to how we're doing, but also, and I think this is quite insightful, Maxine, is that the benefit of it is that it shows us that we are able to take responsibility for ourselves. And that communicates a really important lesson to us. It's from, what movie is this from? There is no fate but what you make. Right? It is Teshuvah, I think, is a radically anti-deterministic religious principle. That our fate is up to us. And I think I've been really troubled by like how much people love like Myers-Briggs tests and things like that. Because I think the takeaway for that is like, oh, let me try to figure out what kind of person I need to be. Whereas I think what Teshuvah is teaching us is, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of person could I decide to be? What kind of person do I value being and do I want to live into being? I don't need to be consigned into having to be an INTP. I can actually instead make a decision about what kind of person it excites me to be, what kind of person I value being, and I can live into that decision. It's an intentional act of autopoiesis, self-creation. You create yourself anew. Let's look at the second half of this. You're going to be gobsmacked. Question. What's the major metaphor or symbol that's used in the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah? Right? Scales, usually. But also, when we talk about Rosh Hashanah, we say, may I be what in the what of what?
Inscribed in the book of life.
Good. May I be inscribed in the book of life. Passive voice. Oh ho ho. But wait for Rebbe Yaakov Yosef Polnoya to explode that from within. Okay. Lauren, you want to keep on going?
Okay. This is according to what Yaakov Yosef of Polnoa interpreted in his Toldot Yaakov Yosef on Parshat Pinchas regarding the sorry?
I'm just kidding. You were correcting all the stuff, so I turned it in Pinchas.
אני ממש מדברת עברית. אין לי...
Right.
אין לי...
No, it's good. It's good.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Regarding
I accept you.
My father would have like, don't ask if he had heard that kind of Hebrew. Regarding the rabbinic teaching found in Rosh Hashanah 16b, that on Rosh Hashanah 3 books are open, and the righteous are immediately written for life.
All right, pause. Okay, so 3 books are opened. All right, 1 for Tzadikim Gemorim, 1 for Rishoim Gemorim, 1 for Beinonim. 1 for completely righteous people, spotless, perfect, mwah. Another 1 for completely wicked people, villains, terrible, baddie, no good nicks. And the middle book is for the middle people, for the ambivalent people, for the people who are somewhere in between those two things. Us.
Probably most people,
normal people. Now,
right,
it says,
would be most people.
Very much, I would say, maybe even everybody. But the righteous, it says, are la'alter nichtavim l'chaim, right? The righteous are immediately written for life. But we know when we look at this world that it is not that simple. So the Toldos intervenes and says, what do we really mean when we say that? So that is.
Oh, Sorry?
Yeah.
That is,
Mhm.
yeah, so I wrote, God opens 3 new books for each of us on Rosh Hashanah.
3
And
new
each
books.
person, this is amazing, each person inscribes themselves for the year to come according to how they intend. If one accepts oneself for the new year to be counted among the righteous, to fulfill one's purpose and potential in this world, then one is immediately written for life. And the wicked and ambivalent, these are they who do not accept on themselves yet to fulfill their purpose and potential in the new year. And thus they do not yet have purpose in their world. In other words, it's all about kavana. If you really, if your intention is to improve yourself over the year, then you yourself have turned yourself around for being inscribed in the book of life. Very interesting.
Right. Now, it emplaces Rosh Hashanah's judgment in the sphere of your life. Now, it doesn't mean that you, I mean, who knows? Rahman al someone, God forbid, someone might have a tragedy. We might not make it through the next year. We don't know. But that's not what he thinks this really means. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. When the righteous are written for in the book of life, what it means is, do you see yourself as having a purpose in this world? And are you committing yourself to live into it? That's, instead of maybe the book of life, we can call it the book of living. Are you going to really live in the coming year? That's what it means to be written in the book of living. Because you'll be really living. And it will be you that will be doing it. It won't just be Joe Schmo. It won't be Dasman. It won't be just some random person who's drawing another breath, making it through another day. It is you actualizing yourself, committing yourself to be the person that you can become. Teshuvah is not about fate. It is about becoming. Teshuvah is about committing yourself to being the person that you can become. Teshuvah is anti-fate, anti-doom. It's not about the past. It's about the way the past flows into the future through us. Teshuvah is about opening the dike, paying attention to that stream, and channeling it where it needs to go. Okay, so now that we've come to learn about the essentiality of taking a self-account, how can we apply this to our lives? What kinds of practices can we imagine? What kinds of questions do we need to ask? I don't mean this theoretically. Let's brainstorm for the next few minutes. What kinds of practices can we try to do over the next few weeks heading into Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur?
I attended a very, very interesting session yesterday by somebody who is a poet and liturgist, and he had us go through writing our own vidui. In other words, looking at our lives, what is it that we truly regret? What is it that we wish we had not done? What is it that we feel we're not yet accomplishing, but we want to accomplish? That was a fantastic, it was really, really a fantastic experience. It really, really, I know for me, it got me to really take a look at Cheshbon haNefesh. You really, really look to yourself. And you really, it included things like, hey, maybe I haven't done enough for ecology. Maybe I haven't done enough for Tikkun Olam. Or it can be like, gee, I wish I hadn't yelled at my brother yesterday. I mean, it can be from the small to the very, very big, but it's an amazing kind of exploration of one's own soul.
I think it's really important. So the book Sefer Cheshbon haNefesh, and this is still done in a lot of Musar yeshivas, is that you are encouraged to have a spiritual journal. And that especially during Elul, but really during the entire year, you take account of what you've been up to, what you do, and how you feel about it, effectively. I would say it's really important, I think, to not let, though, the enormity of the task of what it means to become a self overwhelm you. think to make sure that we frame it as practices that we are committing ourselves to. This is a trait, you know, so Sefer Cheshbon haNefesh is about actually working on 13 aspects of yourself. So you can say, okay, so this year is the year I want to work on this aspect of me. I want to work on being patient. I want to look at the ways I was impatient in where I was impatient when it was inappropriate and I was patient when it was inappropriate. Or I want to work on my relationship with my brother. I want to work on my nutrition, right? The way I treat my body. I don't eat enough cake. I mean, seriously, right? Like you might not provide for yourself treats and rewards, which I think everyone deserves. That's important. I'm not making time for Torah, right? I would say it's important to be concrete, because it's important to also not catastrophize. It's important not to, which I know Mom will accuse me of doing, which I always do, make things too big, right? Or make things abstract. It's important, I think, because, you know, as a former therapist of mine would say, it's important to get a foot in the door. You get a foot in the door, and that keeps the door open. And you inch it open, you know, week by week, month by month. It's better to do things than not do things, right? I am somebody who is the guiltiest person in what it means to want to be there already. I want to have it done already. But I think Teshuvah teaches us the wisdom of practice and of process. That you're always in the midst of doing Teshuvah. Now I wish we had done the Rebbe Nachman thing, because Rebbe Nachman's chap, which we'll get to later in the series, is doing Teshuvah on Teshuvah. Teshuvah doesn't end. To think of Teshuvah as ending means you need to do Teshuvah. Because Teshuvah is really nothing more or less than life and living. It is committing ourselves to living with integrity and authentically, to taking on the ya'ud and tafkid, the purpose and the potential of what it means to be us, what's special and what's wonderful about who we are and what we can bring into this world. Because the world deserves it, God wants it, and you have it. The Ramchal says in his Mesilas Yesharim, the foundation of good action and the root of true service of God is for a person to know their goal in this world. I think that's a moving target. I think our goal evolves and changes, and it's a manifold thing. But we have the chance, I think, to really in this practice what it means to pay attention to ourselves. Learn who it is we even are, to reacquaint ourselves with ourselves, so that we can figure out what it is that we want to attend to and what it is that deserves attention. I really want to encourage us, open up a new page of that journal. Just spend a good 5-10 minutes tomorrow morning, tonight, just writing about what you want, writing about how you feel. And I think that'll provide the roadmap as it unfolds in this journey into Teshuvah. Hope everyone has a great night. This recorded directly to my computer, so the parts that were spotty should be, I think, recorded smoothly. So if you want to review with the podcast and the YouTube, it'll be up by tomorrow. We have another session for the next 2 weeks, 8 o'clock, Thursday, same Zoom link. And I think I figured out the internet issue. Also, we have Kabbalat Shabbat on Zoom tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Please join. The Zoom, I can post it right now in the chat. Terminator. Is that there is no fate but what you make? Is it from Terminator? I think it's for everybody. It's just Judaism teaches it. Judaism is like being a human being, but all the more so. Once I just want to look at the other sessions. Okay. Beth Lita Kabbalat Shabbat. Copy invitation. Show me invitation. Here's the link. So that's for Kabbalat Shabbat, 7 o'clock tomorrow. It's a lot of fun. There's guitar. Usually we have also services in person, but I think this week we're not doing it because it's supposed to thunderstorm on Shabbos. Bummer. But we'll be back doing it in person at Beth Lida on Shabbos. But we're also, we'll have an announcement next week also I think be having 2 sessions on some deep dives into the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur liturgy. So if you have some requests for what parts of liturgy you want to do an analysis of, please let me know, and we can kind of take it on there, like we did the kind of the review of the Haggadah around Pesach. So let me know, and thank you so much for joining, and thank you for your patience and your resilience. Katerina, you want to say something?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much. It was fantastic. I just wanted to know how we could go about, if possible, to reserve a spot for the in-person services. I know you said not this week, but like for the following weeks.
There is a link for it. I don't have it in front of me at this moment. If you go to the Beth Lida website, bethlida.ca, I think it has. I think we put the protocol up there. If not, you can also download the newsletter, which has the protocol in it. So that has like a link to a Google form where you can sign up for the services.
Okay,
do you live in the area?
No, but
Happy to have you. We have people come from all over.
As long as you give me a ride. Just kidding.
I would too.
You know, the TTC is really just a sideways Shabbos elevator. Okay, everyone have a great evening, and thank you so much for joining, and thanks again for your patience. I really appreciate you sticking with it.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Bye.
Shabbat